says, hey, your values are wrong, or you're not really in the right position, please step aside or do something.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed the translating going from Romanian to English.
So,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
I missed some of that.
Sorry.
The question was if
Some of it was in my English. I do apologize for that. It sounds like Romanian, but actually the words are English. So just kidding.
So the question was if the leader
Yeah,
has
it's
the
an HR manager that's got the guts to go to the CEO and just tell him maybe 5% of that presentation. Raise your hands. People who have done that and still alive. 1. 2. Have you changed jobs afterwards by some accident? No.
Lucian, era filmul ăla cu și caii se împușcă, nu așa? They shoot horses, don't they? They fire HR managers, don't they?
Yes, they do. I'm not an HR manager. I mean, for me, I have my own opinions on these people, so, but I'm just a moderator today. I'm supposed to be nice. I've been evaluated once by an HR manager and 2 times by a headhunter, and I ended up finding my own job, which I do have now, and I'm okay. So, yeah, over to you. I'm sorry.
So the question is, should a CEO be made aware that their values are important for the organization?
Yes.
And I think absolutely. So first we know that all right, so according to Vince Schneider, the people make the place. So the culture of the organization is going to form from the people that make up the organization. Trying to ram values down from the top is just not going to be effective. So you're going to have incongruence, you're going to have a lack of engagement, you're going to have a lack of alignment. So I think it's important to start with when we think about placing leaders and thinking about succession planning, when thinking about appointing outside leaders, is do they fit with the culture of the organization? You can't go from a young entrepreneurial empowerment organization to a strong command and control culture just because that's the CEO style. The organization's not going to transform. It's going to lock up. People are going to leave. It loses what sort of makes it its soul, if you will. So yes, leadership, CEOs need to be acutely aware of the culture of the organization. They need to be aware of their own values and how well that aligns. I mean, I think an effective CEO and an external, if you're considering taking a position, has to evaluate whether this is a good fit, right? Not just do I have the experience, the technical background to run an organization like this, but am I going to fit in this culture? And even outside of CEOs, I mean, if you've ever switched positions, switched jobs, switched companies, hopefully you consider, am I going to fit here? Do I like these people? Did I walk through the offices and say, yeah, I can picture myself in here with these type of people? So I think it's important not just at the leadership level, but for everybody to consider this.
Another one from our panel over here. Could a toxic leader become a positive one, or vice versa? Do you know any example, and what was the context?
Yeah, I mean, look, so the idea of toxic leadership is that it's not a very good thing. So I think I would say if we're seeing the true toxic leadership has become a good thing, no. And therefore I don't really have a good example of
No,
where
but
it's more positive.
going to the right side of the force, so to speak. I mean, toxic leader defecting and turning into a positive, into a non-toxic leader.
Let's say that the powerful right side of a toxic leader, which is this authoritarian, strong-willed personality, may be right for some context. So I can think of, for instance, a turnaround context where when it goes into the idea of a threat and of a need for quick, decisive action, could be useful there. It rights the ship, so to speak, but it's probably not the right long-term leadership approach.
If I may add, I think the question was if we can change a little bit.
Yeah, can we change
positive.
people?
And I think that the
Like
key here.
Jean-Jacques Rousseau believed they can.
Yeah, I think and based on what I do for a living, because one part of our practice is to develop leaders, the key is strategic self-awareness. So if these people understand their impact on the organization and on their careers, and if they have an understanding of their own values and motivators, the answer is yes, some things can be changed.
Și aș mai adăuga aici că, da, până la urmă toți avem anumite derailuri, anumite toxicități care se manifestă puternic sub stres. Dacă locul în care ne desfășurăm activitatea e un loc frumos, în care ne simțim bine, în care toată lumea e în armonie și clienții ne plac și cumpără produsele și facem profit și depășim planul și satisfacem acționarii, șansele ca toate chestiile astea să iasă la suprafață și să se vadă cât de toxice sunt mai mici. Deci e o chestiune de ciclicitate. Probabil că vedem mai multe toxicități din astea aparente atunci când corabia se zgâlție și lucrurile merg prost. Asta nu înseamnă că dacă nu ne pregătim mental și știm cam pe unde avem noi micile noastre unde, probabil că putem să le suportăm mai bine și mai ales să le facem mai suportabile pentru cei din jurul nostru atunci când ne apucăm.
Ok, sunteți gata de o întrebare foarte mare? For Mr. Bruce Willis in the first panel, which is supposedly okay. Right. Did you beat up guys? No, just kidding. No, it's another thing. It's not about beating up people. If you know Romanians, you're aware we are very bright and good at startups, but we fail at implementation and execution. Is this a cultural thing? No. It's a time bomb kind of thing. Anyway, do you American students realize when in school they are? No, I'm gonna have to turn over to you because you're very good at writing, so I cannot understand.
Sorry for that, I'm not a doctor.
All right, they are.
Do they realize when in school they are not able or do they not want to be leaders and end up to execution? Because here in Romania we have many shepherds.
Okay, so it's about implementation, execution, and the guy with the bright idea. Well, the guys with the bright ideas, we think. I don't, but she does. Anyway, shall I run over to Bruce Willis?
If only I had his looks, talent, and money, it'd be okay. Actually, I think we have the same phenomenon going on as well. But the cultural differences, I don't know if it's necessarily cultural differences on the entrepreneurship side. I think it's many aspects of the economy that is different here. Just having come to Romania for a number of years, I see a lot more startups and a lot more entrepreneurship and just that stage of the economy. I think our students, I don't know if there's a similarity or not, but we always say the students come out ready to run the company in their own mind, but not in their own abilities. So we have a very similar issue there. And so that's what we were talking about earlier. I think you have to really convince them that they're on a path and that they need this time to evolve and develop and use the experiences accordingly.
Happy? Ok, Daniela Bova de la SEJ din România. Ca să știm și cu cine vorbim.
Somebody believes that we are good at entrepreneurship. I think again, because I don't know how good we are in execution, but in entrepreneurship we have half the number of startups per capita of the rest of Europe. So we are really slow.
I was about to say the same thing. We're not really daring enough. We don't dare too much to start up a new business. But anyway, what are your personal derailers? That's for each members. So, each member.
I start because I have many, so
Okay.
it'll be
Just mention a couple hundred.
Yeah, I think it's a bit easier to project the scales from HDS, and probably I score high at 9 out of 11. So I think that the bright side of my dark side, it's definitely excitable. It's a lot of passion, but sometimes a little bit too much. and the colorful. And I think this goes for the whole team. So we like to entertain and to get attention, but sometimes we confuse, efficiency with activism. But we are charismatic, or at least we think.
Okay, anyone else with real false?
Mischievous. So limit testing, rule breaking. Yeah, I'd say I score that, and I certainly own that one as well.
That you
Imagine.
get away with this. What?
Imaginative. But I'm really happy because 4 years ago I was imaginative and colorful, and now I'm a little bit less colorful. Very strongly imaginative.
Okay. That reminds me of a sketch made in England. There was this parody of a quiz show, and there was this candidate that was asking, "What is your favorite color?" And that guy couldn't tell, and the other guy was helping him. Blue. Yellow. No, it's not this. What is your favorite? So it's like this, okay? Derailers. We were saying derailers. Are you sure that these are your derailers? I mean, it must be more personal, something more personal than that.
Can we move on, please?
Okay. I was just trying to be a journalist for a while. Okay. Go back to being a moderator. We have a serious question over here. Can one leader still be called toxic when they have only parts of the characteristics detailed? Example, they are emotionally volatile but care about people and want to develop them. So we have a semi-toxic leader. Can we still call him toxic?
Let's not confuse toxic with just ineffective, because those are different ends of the spectrum. So to say I genuinely care about developing people, but my excitable nature gets in the way, is not to say that then that person is toxic. It's just that they have some derailers, they have some barriers to effectiveness. I think when we talk about this toxic leadership profile, we're talking about a very particular thing of self-centeredness, acting in my own interests, sort of this callous disregard for others. So I think we're talking about something more than just ineffective. I mean, they actually may be quite effective at promoting their own agenda. It's just not good for other people.
And I would add, again, based on what I see during development feedback sessions with top leaders, I think the most problematic aspect is the lack of self-awareness. It's like you have too much of the good stuff, so this would be the dark side, and you refuse to see the negative consequences because you are trapped within the fact that you believe that it's very good. So the lack of self-awareness could push people towards toxicity or problems.
Yeah, I have a question. I know most of you are girls, so you're not going to agree with this or care about, but I would like to know if Darth Vader is a toxic leader or not, and if Luke Skywalker is a positive one, because I just wanted to know, from an HR point of view, are these guys really casted on into the characters, or is something wrong? Is something fishy with Star Wars?
Well, no, there's nothing fishy with Star Wars. It's a perfect metaphor for leadership, obviously.
So Darth Vader would be a toxic guy.
But Darth Vader would probably qualify as a toxic leader.
But
So
listen, he made the Star, that the Death Star, which is really like a big company. The Death Star is like a huge planet, right? And he completed that twice.
he's
Whereas
persistent.
Luke Skywalker only killed some people and still he's a good guy. He never did anything in terms of organizational structure. I mean, I would want to work for Darth Vader because he would provide jobs. Whereas Luke Skywalker is just a lone guy that's, okay, fighting for the good of humanity. Hey,
It's fair enough. Luke Skywalker may not be our ideal leader, but Darth Vader, you've got your narcissistic leader, you've got your followers, your colluders, and your passive enablers, and you've got your environment, right? The external threat, these pesky little rebels that are coming to get us. So you actually have the perfect environment for toxic leadership right there.
but it gets the work done.
But it gets done, yeah. It's just not good for anyone but Darth Vader.
Right, and the liberal media in Hollywood that produced the movie ended up on the right side, on the wrong side. Anyway,
So Luke was
let's move-
created by Darth Vader eventually, just to find the common enemy.
Yes, because I know most corporations would like Darth Vader to win. Most corporations, I know, because that's their model. Anyway, going back to there's a question for you, Jared. Could you tell us about some key essential conditions needed for implementing some word management then in change management in a what's happening with HR people that they will not be they will read the write so bad. I mean, is you want people to very slowly understand they've been fired, right? So there wouldn't be a shock to them. So because I can't make it really. So company governed by toxic leadership. Okay. So would you tell us about key essential conditions needed to implement change management in a company governed by toxic leadership? There you go.
Look, I think it's the same conditions for leadership in general. So there's got to be a clear vision that's laid out from the top. Here's the direction that we're going. And there's got to be some alignment of values that people believe in. And ultimately, we start talking about employee engagement. Do they buy the vision? Are they willing to go in that direction and to initiate the change? And we know change is hard work. So without engagement, I don't think change management is something we can force on people. I think like I said, it starts with engagement. It starts with the commitment from the employee base. So clear vision, buying into the vision, engagement and enthusiasm from the employees. You're probably selling their own self-interest, why it's better for them as well, right? These common goals, this collaborative leadership style.
Because I make a little bit of a living out of this, change management. I wanted to add that from my experience, you cannot do change management against the CEO. You can only do the change management with the CEO on board. And even the CEO, in order to succeed in a change process, needs to create a very powerful coalition around him. And creating this very powerful coalition is very difficult to achieve if you're not sensitive enough into listening to what the other wants. Because in the change process, you have to see two levels of engagement. One is the superficial, and if you want the formal level of engagement, which is translated in Romanian with Da șefă. Yes, sir. The other one is the more profound level of engagement, where eventually people try to see and get to see that there are intimate benefits for them in the change process, or at least some acceptable outcomes of the change process. And you have to have the sensitivity to implement the change on both these two axes, again, with a very knowledgeable and I would say wise CEO.
Yeah, I would introduce a second category, which would be Da șefă. Yes, ma'am, which would be far more engaging, I'm saying. But anyway, is there any link between burnout phenomena and the fourth leadership patterns? Question over here. I don't know, what company is it? Would be a name?
Again,
Again?
nothing to do with the burnout phenomenon.
Of course, no. I'm not burned out either. No, I'm not burned out. No, I'm not. I'm not burned out. Not at all. Absolutely not burned out. No. Also,
Can you answer this, Lucian?
yeah, okay, good. Just kidding. Okay, fourth leadership patterns and the burnout phenomenon.
The four leadership patterns, meaning the styles we presented. So
Yeah.
okay, so I think probably your guess is that the strategist, the person that is motivated by power and recognition, creates a very competitive work environment that might put a lot of pressure on the people, and this might go to burnout, probably. But I think it's also a question of, again, what we measure through power is not a negative implication. It's a desire to be number one, a desire to put a step where nobody else have put before. If this can derail or turn into a bad or or a bulldozer type of culture, yes, of course. But I think burnout, I'm not a specialist, is also a question that is based on personal characteristics of the individual. So
Also, Romania would add that understaffing is very important to the burnout phenomenon. I would say most of the organizations I've noticed with people burning out are with understaffed organizations.
But yeah, from a values perspective, and I think your hard-charging, competitive, results-oriented organizations are going to be more likely to burn out employees. Your organization that emphasizes work-life balance and an employee-centric culture naturally is probably going to be less likely to have that. And that's not to say that one is a preference for the other. I mean, some organizations are in ultra-competitive environments and need to be results-oriented. And there's going to be employees that prefer that hard-charging, results-oriented environment because it aligns with their own values. But it's easier to see how that translates into burning out and churning through employees versus a more employee-centric culture.
Happy with the burnout answer? All right. How does the hidden side of the personality influences the process of integration of a newly hired personnel in a company? So the hidden side of personality, is it important for the way you integrate that person? I don't know, who wrote this in? Maybe they can give us some more specifics. Cum influențează partea ascunsă a personalității? Nobody? Okay. Okay. So, sir, can you introduce yourself?
Cristian Radu. I think that is very clear because Madalina told us regarding the dark side of personality, and everyone have own dark side. Let's say.
Okay. Madalina or Jerry?
the question is how the dark side, so the
Influences the
overused
process
characteristic
of integration for somebody that's just hired.
Okay, so I think it would be very good for the hiring manager, and this is our belief that onboarding, selection, onboarding, development is easier when both parties, the new employee and the manager, are aware about the good stuff and the bad stuff, and they can plan for development, and they can work upon it. So again, the key is to be aware of the good stuff and also of the bad stuff. So use in selection and onboarding assessments would help a lot.
All right, just two more questions, and we'll have to move on into the wine tasting. Yeah, good news, but still good news to come. Based on your experience with culture and values, which are the values of a company that can survive the toxic leadership most effectively? What do they do?
So the question is about surviving toxic leadership, not preventing toxic leadership.
No. Just surviving. That's a traditional Romanian question.
Right. So the interesting thing is that there's an organizational context that promotes the existence of toxic leadership, right? This is the need for security and stability, an organization that is averse to rapid change. So absent that, it's probably less likely to suffer from toxic leadership. And with that, paradoxically, it's probably more likely to continue to have toxic leadership. Aside from those values, I don't know if there's one better suited for toxic leadership. I mean, it's bad. So it's not like, hey, you'll be fine with toxic leadership if you have these values. I mean, it's a bad thing. But the cultural context provides some of the necessary kindling for this, and for toxic leadership to take hold.
Let me give you a practical example from media. For instance, state TV has survived maybe 10 toxic leaders with one core value, the cafeteria. And it's still there. Is it? Somebody knows cafeteria and TVR? Right. So it's a good example of an institution. And the last question: at which stage of an M&A there should be an alignment of core values and identification of appropriate new leaders? So M&A question: where do you align the values and get the new leaders for the new company, the merged company?
I would dare to say this is something that has to be done at the time of the due diligence, at least to map the reality and see if there is a level of, a common level of values that one can build upon, and if there is no such ground, basically I would say more than half. I hear that 70 or 80% of the mergers and acquisitions processes are failed, and most of the failures are attributed to cultural differences within the organizations.
Happy?
Yeah, I would say I would agree wholeheartedly with that. The earlier, the better. So the example that comes to mind, Bridgestone and Firestone is nearly 30 years into their merger and still refer to the Bridgestone side of the business and the Firestone side of the business. So this was early on. There was no congruency in the culture, the American and the Japanese sides, and it, to continue on, they just never merged them all together. We look at airlines. You have Continental Airlines and United Airlines have just merged in the last 2 years. And they have a very similar aspect, the Continental culture of customer service that Brian referred to earlier, versus the United culture of operational efficiency. And throughout the merger, they seem to have retained neither. So it can be quite devastating. But it's we know mergers and acquisitions rarely pay off to the way they were expected, and I would agree wholeheartedly that culture is probably one of the leading causes for that failure.
Yeah, also we as a country, we tried to merge with Europe a few years back, and we're still trying to synchronize our values, and we don't know how long it's going to take. So thank you very much. Thank you, the panel. Very round of applause.